People, deluded. I'm back again. Appreciative to have you lot tuned in. Now, allegedly, there's been an update where Martin Odegaard's injury is concerned. Benjamin White is still refusing an England call-up. We've been linked with a Spanish midfielder, Javi Guerra of Valencia. I know we can't do a deal until January at the very least. I think I speak for every Arsenal fan where you wish we could sign a central midfielder owing to our somewhat crisis ahead of the North London derby, people. And, again, it's just deep. You know what, people? I just done the maths in my head. No Odegaard, no Merino, no Declan Rice for a game. Do you start Sterling? Does Kai Havertz play as a striker, a number 9, a number 10, and 8.5? Does Timber get into midfield? Does Zinchenko get into midfield? Do you blood the young Ethan Nwaneri into the mix, and by that extension, Lewis Skelly as well? Now, I'm nervous as an Arsenal fan, not in necessarily the performance against Spurs, because I feel regardless, we should be putting in a performance and putting in a show, and I think there's more than enough to win the game. But obviously, we're not going to have our strongest team. We weren't exactly playing at our fluid best when everybody was fit. Of course, during the international period, you've seen a bunch of footballers pull out of their countries. That being said, Declan Rice and Saka have still played. I believe Thomas Partey has played 180 odd minutes. So yeah, people, you do wonder how the outlook looks going into the Spurs game and the clustered amount of fixtures that's coming our way. We all know September is a busy one. We've got the champs, we've got City, we've got Spurs. You got the League Cup against Bolton. You've got many a game, really, from now to the end of the year and really into January. It's a madness. And the PGMOL are still speaking about Arsenal Football Club, and they're doubling down and backing their boy about their incorrect decision, or correct, to send off Declan Rice just before the international break against Brighton. I must admit, though, one does wonder where the international break's concerned. And before we get into everything, Martin Odegaard, why is there a bunch of essentially pointless international games just after the Euros has been played, really? Again, injuries can strike at any time to anyone doing anything. Merino got injured in training. He could have very well got injured representing Spain had he have got a call up. But it is frustrating, and you've seen a lot of players turn down call-ups. Why can't our boys, people? But yeah, enough rambling and waffling. That's my thoughts on everything. Let's get into it, people. Now, if I share my screen with you guys, again, we have to wait for Mikel Arteta to shed some light. And what I mean by that is the press conference. He's no doubt going to be asked about the injury concerns and his sentiment and everything. And, the man has just probably found a way of playing, or for Arsenal to play with the absence of our two midfielders in Mikel Merino and obviously Declan Rice, throwing Odegaard, and the plans are kind of out the window. We have to wait for the press conference, people, and we do need to remember Martin Odegaard's injury is one where I'm no physio, but it's one where the more days that go on, the more you learn about the injury, people. But the Daily Mail have offered an update of sorts. They've said Martin Odegaard's injury timescale revealed as Arsenal learns severity of captain's ankle issue in update issued by Norway's doctor. Martin Odegaard is set to miss at least 3 weeks of action after suffering an ankle injury with Norway on international duty. Now, again, I'll have that because weeks is better than months. Of course, I don't want Odegaard to be injured as a person, as an individual, let alone as a footballer. But I'll have that, of course, to not have him against Manchester City, Spurs, Atalanta and whatnot. It's jarring, really and truly. We all know he limped off in the second half of his country's 2-1 win against Austria in the Nations League on Monday. He looked in severe distress. He did walk off the pitch, even though he was aided. You would have seen him pictured on crutches, people. And the Norwegian doctors and managers and whatnot have had, to be fair, you've seen a lot of noise coming out of them. For what it's worth, according to Norway's team doctor Ola Sand, the 25-year-old who underwent medical examinations in London on Tuesday looks to have avoided a broken ankle. And crucially, at this moment, no ligament damage as well, which obviously affects the time scale. But he's expected to be out of action for at least the rest of September. So it could be better. It sure as hell could be worse. Such ankle injuries often take at least 3 weeks. Anything other than that is just a bonus. Now, I want him to return sooner rather than later, owing to fitness, of course, people. But one does wonder if the swelling goes down, can you give him some painkilling injections? Of course, he won't be at his best, but these are things that footballers go through. I would love to have our captain, and obviously when you think of Odegaard, you think of silky passes, plays in the final third. I know he hasn't had his shooting boots, but those late runs into the box or on the edge of the area. But we also lose a lot defensively. He's our second man in defense. Kai Havertz presses from the front. Odegaard joins, and Odegaard's he is the captain, but and he plays like a conductor, but he's the conductor of the orchestra from a defensive outlook, people. So we lose a lot. And going back to what I said about the fluidity, ankle injuries are very painful right away. With Martin, it was extremely painful. He became very worried. They're studying the MI images now and have sent them on. No violation is suspected. What we have so far obtained from the MRI examination in London is that there's probably no fracture in the ankle. In the event of a fracture, we're talking about being out of action. Apologies for 6 weeks plus. So while it's a bitter pill to swallow, people, and he faces a long injury layoff, and you add in Declan Rice missing a game, Mikel Merino a fractured shoulder, you have to remember injuries can strike at any time. This is jarring, people, and it'd be nice if he misses the next international break, in which October, where it will be Slovenia and Austria. If that proved to be the case, Odegaard can miss up to 7 matches over Arsenal's next month, people, including crucial Champions League ties against Paris Saint-Germain as well as Atalanta, people, which is jarring. He's had an ankle injury before. It's always a bit difficult to interpret an MR image when you had an old injury. I'm even like, I can't read, apologies. But Arsenal are almost certain there's no breach, but this still may take time. His response to rehabilitation in the next few weeks is the most important. It will start carefully on the bike, carefully in relation to what he can tolerate from pain. Then you can take it gradually. And you've got to remember, the ankle's a jarring place to get injured, because obviously you've got to be able to walk. You're putting a lot of weight on that, people, which is why beyond obvious, him struggling to walk, which is why I was happy to see him in crutches, because you're taking his body weight off the ankle. So we hope to see the 25-year-old back sooner rather than later. But crucially, people, it is what it is in that regards. And I mean, woof. I mean, I don't think that the lad went out there to injure Martin Odegaard, but the individual that was involved in that collision has said he'd like to, offer his apologies, and he hopes Odegaard comes back sooner rather than later. Lee Carsley, the interim manager of England, and to be fair, to see Trent's performances, to see Rico Lewis, to see Gomez, to see Madueke off the bench, VAR disallowed Saka against Finland, but it's nice to see the way Lee Carsley is making England play. It would be nice to see Benjamin White in the England fold. I don't know where you lot are at with that, but apparently he's wished to still not be further contacted. He said, we spoke about this in the squad selection. Every player that is eligible to play for England is in with a chance. As far as I'm aware, he asks not to be contacted. If that changes, that will change. I think it's important that we have real competition all over the pitch, and the more players we have available to pick from, the better it is. And where you look at Trent Alexander-Arnold, to have the luxury of Benjamin White either as a right back or as a centre half, and a fit Reece James, England going into the 2026 World Cup, or just the internationals that are available to them, could have some good options, people, in my humble opinion. Keeping up the theme with Arsenal, people, referee Kavanagh was right to send Rice off. I mean, by the letter of the law, of course, but I mean, the game's gone mad. And if that is going to be the case, there needs to be consistency throughout all of the decisions made, not just in the Arsenal game against Brighton, but in general. But I'm at peace with it. Allegedly, the panel said clear, deliberate, and impactful. The second yellow was correct. They're obviously going to back their boy. The panel, which unanimously apologies, backed the decision, wrote, Rice knows what he's doing. It's a gentle touch, but once the referee sees it, he has no choice. I mean, they're always going to back their boys. The only referees I believe in this day and age that are genuinely honest are those that are not refereeing anymore and working, in a freelance basis. These guys work for the PGMOL. They're not going to do their friend dirty. They're not going to be truthful, people. But when did the refs play the game? Veltman has spoken and said, for me, the man that was involved, he said, for me, it goes really far with like comments on social media. We have a new game day coming up, so I don't want to say a lot about it. The only thing I can say is that I didn't want to kick him. It was just he kicked it away. I kicked him. I find it quite harsh as well. If you see my reaction, you can look back. I was not going to the referee to get him a second yellow. Danny Welbeck was. I was going to him. Why did you kick it? I'm sorry, I kicked you. I think he gave an amazing comment. I think that's what personally surprised me about him. He commented in the media after. So yeah, people, at the end of the day, it's there with Declan Rice. We're at where we're at in that regards. Woke football is getting silly, because when Spurs come to the Emirates, I think they have to change their kit, and us traveling to their place this Sunday, we are wearing our black kit, people, owing to kit clashes. I mean, I know the refs are incompetent, but come on. Apparently they even rejected Arsenal's request to wear red socks red socks and shorts, which again is ridiculous in my opinion. Arsenal will wear their away kit in Sunday's North London derby for the first time in 38 years. So the first time, essentially, well, first time there's obviously been there, but first time in my lifetime, essentially, people where I'm old enough to remember such. After the red and white home kit was deemed to clash with Spurs' colours, we'll don our black away strip at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium after the refs professional governing board PGMOL said their home kit features too much white. I hear that, but you really can't separate. Well, been doing this for years. You really can't separate the red of Arsenal and the white of Spurs, especially where you got VAR. If there is any incorrect decisions, absolutely crazy in my opinion. But for what it's worth, the PGMOL and Premier League ruled that our 2024-25 home kit features too much white, thus clashing with Spurs' traditional colours, even with the option of red shorts and socks for us, which was also discussed. As a result, for the first time in recent North London derby history, we'll be wearing our changed colours, people, which is crazy. The last time we did it was 1985-86, which I was not about. Again, we go into our fourth Premier League game with 7 points from our opening 3 games. Spurs are 10th on 4 points. We have won our past 2 visits to Tottenham Stadium. Hopefully it's free. And hopefully we win, which we did last year, but we don't go 3-0 up. And I hope we go 3-0 up, but we don't allow them back into the game via Raya's mistake or Declan Rice's penalty. Not to say it's just them, it's just the whole game was a bit silly in that regard. So it is what it is, people. Keeping up the theme with referees, apparently Gerard Gillett has been appointed the referee for the North London derby. Stuart Atwell will be on VAR. And I mean, all of these refs have a long history of incorrect decisions and terrible decisions against my football club. So at this point, is there any point me moaning, people? Finally, again, we can't sign anyone because the window is closed, but Arsenal is seriously interested in Valencia midfielder Javi Guerra. I might do a tactical video on him. Despite his 100 million euros release clause, Valencia are currently considering selling him for less than 30 million. Why is that the case? With Arsenal, the player's preference largely due to the presence of Mikel Arteta. We've been linked with him before, and Manchester United have been linked with him. I do think we need a revamp and some long-term options in the middle of the park. Is he's the guy? Get it done in January at the very least, especially if there's a discount. And I definitely wish there was some way of getting him fit and signed for the football club going into the North London derby. But it is what it is, man. I mean, Rabiot's a free agent if anyone's willing to have him, people. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on everything. Don't forget to turn on the notification bells. Make sure you're following my second channel, DG Sports Views, where I still waffle about Arsenal but speak football in general. Make sure you're following on Twitch and Playback because we do different content. We're allowed to watch football, which YouTube doesn't allow owing to copyrights. Let me know your thoughts on everything we discuss, people. Any emerging news on anything, you know, live streams and videos will come out. Check out the rest of the content, but most importantly, thank you for tuning in. Stay safe, stay blessed. Peace. Always